whom Rennie shared with two other associates in the banking law section of the firm, buzzed the speakerphone of Rennie's desk. Attorney Jefferson's McClintock from Charleston calling on the line 1. Says it's personal. I'll take it. Rennie shut the door of the windowless office he had occupied since graduating from law school 3 months earlier. If he had continued working 6 hours a week, he had a 50-50 chance of a comfortable six-figure salary in an office with a view of the city in approximately 12 years. But for now, he was at the bottom of the legal food chain of 104 lawyers employed by Jackson, Robinson, and Temples in Charlotte, Raleigh, Winston-Salem, and Washington, D.C., and his name, Josiah Fletcher Jacobson, was next to the last on the firm's letterhead. Rennie picked up the phone. Hello, Mr. Clintock. How are you, Remy? I'm okay. I'm busy learning the ins and outs of truth in lending and Regulation Z. Bank work, eh? Yes, sir. I have to review all the forms used by lending institutions we represented to make sure they contain the exact wording required by the regulations and print everything in the appropriate size type. Sounds picky. It is, but if I make a mistake, the banks can get hit with class action lawsuits involving thousands of consumers who have a cause of action, even if they didn't suffer any financial harm. Our government regulators at work. This Charleston lawyer coughed and cleared his throat. Well, we'll move the law books to the side for a minute and let's talk about your father's estate. With the help of your two associates, I most complete the documents needed to probate your father's will. But there are several matters that need your attention. Two associates, Rennie, knew how the system worked. Multi-lawyer involvement was Mr. Clintock's way to triple his money, charge for each junior lawyer's time, and throw in another fee at a time and a half for the senior partner proofread a stack of papers. Any problems? Rennie asked. We need to discuss some things, Mr. Clintock answered vaguely. When can you come to Charleston? Tomorrow is Friday. Why not leave early and see me around 2? Rennie had worked until 10 o'clock 2 nights earlier in the week and had billed enough hours for the week to sneak away by late morning on Friday. Besides, he wasn't going to let anything delay morning forward on the estate. Could we make it to 3? Let me see, Mr. Clintock paused. Yes, I can move my 3 o'clock appointment up an hour. Do I need to bring anything? No, replied Mr. Clintock. We'll have the paperwork ready. See you then. We're reading The List by Robert Whitlow, one of my favorite books. Hi, Dash. No, I don't do no murder drones. With your bill on top, Rennie remarked as he heard the click of another lawyer hanging on the phone. Rennie let his mind wander as he looked around his office. Even though it wasn't much larger than a walk-in closet, Rennie didn't complain. Landing a job at a big law firm in the major city was the ultimate prize for the masses of eager students passing through the law school meat grinder. Each one entered the legal educational progress, hoping they would come out with a law review on their resumes. And Mignon status in difficult job market, most ended up as a hamburger, revealed to find any job at all. Rennie had an advantage. Although not on the law review or in the top 10% of his class, he had something even better: connections. For once he really tried, really for the first time he could remember, his father had to come to his aid. Dwight Temples, one of the senior partners in the firm, had attended college with Rennie's father at the Citadel in Charleston. Over the years, they maintained a casual friendship centered around an annual deep-sea fishing expedition off the coast of North Carolina. When Rennie mentioned an interest in working for the firm's Charlotte's office, H.L. Jacobson called Dwight Temples in the interview with the hiring partner at Jackson, Robinson, and Temples became a formality. No, you're okay. Hi, Reese. I'm good. I'm doing good. Rennie was offered a position on the spot. Today was not the first call Rennie had received from Jefferson and McClintock, his father's lawyer in Charleston. 6 weeks before, McClintock telephoned Miss Rennie with news of H.L.'s sudden death on the golf course in Charleston. No warning, no cholesterol problem, no hypertension, no previous chest pains. The elder Jacobson was playing a round of golf with longtime friends Chaz Bentley, his stockbroker, and Alex Southerner, a college of Charleston alumnus and restaurant owner. At the funeral home, Bentley, a jovial fellow and everyday golfer who probably received more stock market advice from Rennie's father than he gave him, and had pumped Rennie's hand and shook his head in disbelief. I don't understand it. He was fine. No complaints of pain or dizziness. We were having a great round at the Old Isle of Palms, of course. You should have seen the shot he hit for the championship tee on the 7th hole. You remember it's a hole with the double water hazards. His tee shot must have gone 225 yards, straight down the fairway. He birded the hole, can't you believe it? Birded the last hole he ever played. The stockbroker made it sound like a nirvana to make a birdie, then die on the golf course. We were teeing off on number 8. Alex had taken a mid-lane on the first shot and hooked his second try into a fairway bunker. I hit a solid drive just little left of the center. Rennie could tell Bentley was enjoying the Southerner's turf and his good shot all over again. Then your father leaned over the tee up to his ball, and he never got his ball on the tee. He finished lamely. Because of the circumstances of his death, the coroner had required an autopsy. The pathologist concluded death by coronary failure. H.L.'s family doctor, James Watson, had complained to Rennie, "Your father's heart has exploded. He never knew what happened. Death was instantaneous. The pathologist called me from the hospital after he examined the body and reviewed his findings with me. Given your father's good health, we were both puzzled at the severe damage to his heart muscle. We know how he died, but not why it happened as it did." Rennie grieved, but he and his father had not had the close relationship. H.L. was harsh, a critical parent whose favor eluded his son like a proverbial carrot on a stick. Rennie tried to please the elder Jacobson, often changed the rules, and Rennie discovered a new way to fail instead. After his mother's death, Rennie only visited his father a couple times a year, since there was no one else with whom to share the considerable asset his father's inherited, and then increased through the savvy investments. Rennie looked forward to his trip to Charleston. Once the estate was settled, he would become what most people called independently wealthy. It had a nice ring to it, and Rennie indulged in the fantasies of future expenditures. H.L. was not a generous parent. He paid for Rennie's education, but never provided the extras he could have easily afforded. After landing the job at Jackson, Robinson, and Temples, Rennie sold his old car for $3,000 and bought a new charcoal gray Porsche Boxster convertible. The payment and insurance on the new car devoured almost half of Rennie's monthly paycheck, but the sporty vehicle was signed to himself and subconsciously to his father that he had started up the ladder of success. Now he would be able to pay off the car, buy a house, perhaps even quit work and duplicate his father's exploits in the commercial real estate market. His stay at the bottom of the law firm letterhead might be very short indeed. Hi, Elaine. Sorry. Reading. I'm doing this. No. Quickly doing this, so I'm leaving quickly. I'm sorry, Elaine. I didn't see. Hi, Dash. Thank you, Reese. How do I do a super chat? I don't know. Hi, Alexander. Hi, El Krutos. If I'm saying that right. Sorry. If I could turn this way, probably see this better. You missed your Spanish lesson. I don't take Spanish lessons, but I used to. Oh, At 2:55 the next afternoon, Rennie was standing on the hot, humid Charleston sidewalk in front of the semicircular double stairway, beckoning him with opening arms to the law firm of McClintock and Carney, Esquires. Some Alabama grande dame must be spinning in her grave, he thought. Her house, her home, the common thread of the domestic and social fabric of her life, taken over by legal scriveners and secretaries with word processors and fax machines. Thank you. I don't know how to do a super chat. Thank you, Reese. Hi, Abigail. It was not an uncommon fate for a growing number of homes and mansions lining 4th Street, and an antique dealer rented Rennie's ancestral homes near the Battery. At least Jefferson McClintock and had Charleston roots. He wasn't a New York lawyer who came south for Splento Festival. I have to go, but I want to let you know that you're really beautiful and keep on reading. Thank you, Reese. I will. At least Jefferson McClintock had Charleston roots. He wasn't a New York lawyer who came south for the Spoleto Festival, unpacked his carpet bag, and hung out a legal shingle. In fact, few current Charlestons went further back to their city origins. McClintock's great-great-grandfather, a Scottish blacksmith servant, could have been a farrier who had sure the great dame's horses had proper footwear. Now the servant's descendants had his desk in the parlor and law books in the living room. When McClintock and his partner, John Carney, purchased the house, they spent the money necessary to maintain the historic and architectural integrity of a 150-year-old structure. They had cleaned the white marble double stairway leading up from the street to the main entrance and made sure the hand railings were kept in good condition by a yearly strain to erase the corrosive effect of Charleston's proximity to the ocean. The exterior stucco had been planted afresh light peach. Only in Charleston could pastel houses reflect good taste. From a fly-blowing plain, the old residential district looked summer fruit compote. Opening the large front door, he stepped into the law firm's waiting area. As with many large 19th century homes, the foyer was wide and spacious as the dining room in the modern house plan. McClintock and Carney had turned the greeting area into a gracious reception room, furnishing it with antiques and quality reproductions. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jacobson," a cheerful receptionist spoke before Rennie could give his name. Probably it is girl. How much do I like this book? 1 out of 10? I would give it a 9 out of 10. Mr. McClintock will be with you in a minute. Noticing a graduation photo of Citadel's class of 1958 on the opposite wall, Rennie walked over for a better look at the black and white picture. "This is our class. A good one," Mr. McClintock remarked as he walked out of his office and shook Rennie's hand. "There's your father. 3rd row from the left in the back, and me second from the right in the first row. It's easy to see why Mr. Clintock was in the first row. At 5 feet 6, he was barely tall enough to gain admittance to a military academy. But to his credit, McClintock didn't weigh 10 pounds more than he had almost 50 years before. He spotted a Citadel haircut and held himself erect, ready to snap to full attention. Rennie knew his father's classmate ran 5 miles every morning, jumped into the Atlantic Ocean every New Year's Day in a southern version of famous Polar Bear Club's annual dip in Lake Michigan. Rennie leaned closer to his father, Henry Lawrence Jacobson, HL to everyone who knew him. He was tall and slim. The influence of early military discipline kept his back straight and shoulders square to the end of his days. Even in the grainy pictures, HL excluded a sense of confidence and control. Not particularly handsome, but without any distracting negative figures, it was not his physical appearance, but an intangible presence that set him apart from his peers. Whether on the schoolyard or in the boardroom, it did not take long for the elder Jacobson eternally generated power to pervade the atmosphere almost him. If Austro-Southern autocracy existed in the 20th century, H.L. Jacobson qualified as Exhibit A. From the graduation photo, H.L.'s dark eyes seemed to probe with the depths of Rennie's soul just as they did. When they interrogated Rennie after she was caught wandering away from the school during recess in the 2nd grade, Rennie, with his dark hair, brown eyes, wary, almost shy smile, looked more like his soft-spoken mother more than his father. Short and solid, Rennie had played outside linebacker for 3 years at Hammond Academy, a private school in Charleston. In his senior year, he received the Best Hit of the Year award for a play in which he tackled the opposite team's punter. It was 4th down, late in the game, and another team was behind 10 points. Rennie suspected a fake punt was in the works and ran as hard as he could toward the punter, slipping between 2 players who were supposed to block him. Hit the punter so hard the punter was knocked several feet through the air. It looked great on the highlight of the film of the game, and Rennie won the award. Neither of his parents attended the game. His mother was in early stages of Lou Gehrig's disease that killed her 3 years later, and his father was out of town at a business meeting. McClintock ushered Rennie into his office. "Come into the parlor. Some antiques are here, including in my desk, were purchased from the Stitwell Gallery," he said, referring to the antique dealer located in former Jacobson family home. McClintock sat down on the 18th century partner's desk, a beautiful mahogany piece designed for 2 clerks to work opposite of each other. Of course, McClintock had the desk to himself. The old lawyer picked up a heavy folder, set it down, and tapped a fountain pen against his desk bolter. "Well, let's get down to business." He hesitated, opening the folder on his desk, then closing it again without taking anything out. "I'm not sure where to begin." "I reviewed my copy of the will," Rennie said. "Everything appears straightforward. Could we just go over the documents you intended to file with the probate court?" "The documents I have prepared for court," McClintock said. "Surely you said they would be ready." "Oh, they are. I have them here." The lawyer patted still closed folder. Rennie reached out his hand. "Yes, I'm sure everything is fine. I'd just like to skim through them." The old lawyer didn't budge. "Rennie, did you study holographic wills in law school?" he asked, staring past Rennie at a spot on the wall behind him. Rennie stopped. "Of course, it's a will in the tester's own handwriting, usually without all the legal boilerplate language and formality of witnesses." "That is correct." McClintock paused. "I don't know how to say this except to ask you point blank. Did your father ever tell you he prepared a holographic will?" A cold chill ran down Rennie's spine. No! He gave me a copy of the will you prepared for him a few months ago after my mother died. I see, McClintock said. He never gave you an updated will prepared by another lawyer. No! You were the only lawyer he used. Tell me, Mr. Clintock, what's going on? McClintock sighed. After your father's death, I had my secretary pull his file to prepare the documents for the probate court. He opened the folder in his desk. Inside was this. He held up a plain white envelope. As you know, in the will I prepared, you were the residential beneficiary of almost all your father's estate. Apparently, a month later, he brought this envelope by my office and asked my secretary to put it in his file. I don't know what he told her. She doesn't remember and probably thought it was a list of assets or the location of important records. He handed the envelope to Rennie. Read it. Rennie took out 3 sheets of paper. No question it was his father's handwriting, a familiar pattern of printing in cursive. It was dated 1 month after the lengthy will prepared by Mr. McClintock. There was only 4 paragraphs. I, Henry Lawrence Jacobson, being sound in a deposing mind, do hereby revoke all wills made by me and make this my last will and testament. Item 1. I hereby will, devise, and bequeath to my son, Josiah Fletcher Jacobson, all my personal belongings and the gold coin collection contained in my safe deposit box at Planters and Merchants Bank. I'll further give and devise to my son all my right, title, and interest to any and all assets, tangible and intangible, in the covenant list of South Carolina Ltd. This bequest is subject to the usual and customary conditions precedent. I hereby will, devise, and bequeath all the rest and remainder residue of my estate, and all including all the real estate, stocks, bonds, certificates of deposit, cash, or other property of any type, tangible and intangible, in the equal shares to the Medical Hospital of South Carolina, the Citadel, the Charleston Historical Society, and the East Episcopal Parish of St. Albans. Item 3. I hereby appoint Jefferson McClintock as executor of my estate. Henry Lawrence Jacobson. The other sheet was a report of the local psychiatrist, Dr. Lewis Abbott, dated the same day as the will. To whom it may concern, I have this day examined Henry Lawrence Jacobson and can state that he is mentally component to his legal affairs. He understands the natural objects of his affection and has informed me of his intention to prepare a last will and testament in which the majority of his assets are bequeathed to charitable institutions. He has indicated that he will make a banquet for his son, Josiah Fletcher Jacobson, consistent with his desire and intentions for him. Lewis Abbott, MD, diplomat, American Board of Psychiatry. Rennie let the papers fall into his lap and stared for several seconds at the floor in front of Mr. McClintock's desk. Every ounce of hope for the future drained out of him. In 2 minutes it took to read the papers. In shock, he didn't even have the strength to ask why. The lawyer cleared his throat and broke the awkward silence. We know the law doesn't favor the holographic will or the one that disinherits family members. There was little doubt that your father wrote the will, but to be sure, I obtained a handwriting analysis. The notes came back just before I called you yesterday. And, Rennie managed weakly, it is as close to 100% match as much as possible. It also extended an interview with Mr. Dr. Abbott. Do you know him? No. He's a former president of the South Carolina Psychiatric Association with impeccable credentials. He had detailed records of an interview with your father and stands completely by the report issued at the time of the will. Does he have connections with the medical college? Rennie ventured. I thought of that too. No, he doesn't. There's no way to claim any self-interest on his part that would raise a question about his medical opinion of your father's capacity. I don't care what a psychiatrist says. This is crazy. Why would my father do this to me? Rennie asked, desperation and hurt creeping into his voice. I don't know. I'm a father, Rennie. I don't understand. But item 1 is nonsense. I didn't even know he had a gold collection. And I never even heard of the Covenant List of South Carolina Limited. What is that? Where are the conditions presented? I was hoping you might shed a light on that. We've gone over every inventory asset 3 times and found no record of this company. Since your father was involved in so much commercial development, it could have been a real estate limited partnership. But you don't know. That's right, I'm guessing. Rennie put the papers on the edge of McClintock's desk. We can't tear this up and probate the other will, can we? I'm sorry, but you know the answer to that. Since I'm the executor, I can exercise as much leeway as possible in interpreting personal belongings. There are several valuable antiques at the Isle of Palms house. I'm going to consider those items personal belongings so that you can have them. Also, I would advise you to consider getting another legal option about the legitimacy of the will. I understand, but the handwriting is on the wall, or actually sheets of paper, Rennie said bitterly. Being on the receiving end of a lawyer telling his client what the client does not want to hear is painful. I can't blame you for anything you feel, McClintock responded. I did not want to give you this news. He handed Rennie a key. This is the key to the safe deposit box 413 at the Planters and Merchants Bank downtown. You are the signatory, aren't you? Yes. There's one other puzzling thing. What else? Rennie asked, bracing for more news. Nothing substantive, including some routine postmortem instructions, was a letter. McClintock read aloud. Dear Jeff, the enclosed information will assist you in probating my estate. As soon as possible, please send a copy of my obituary notice to the people on the attachment list. H.L. Handing the second sheet to Rennie, McClintock asked, Do you know any of these individuals? Rennie quickly scanned the names. No one immediately familiar. As he read it more slowly, he counted 9 names with the post box addresses. No street names, no phone, no numbers. All men, no women. I don't know any of these men, Rennie responded slowly. I recognize several family names, families with a long history in the Low County. It was the same with me. As far as I know, none of them are relatives. I don't see the name of any of my father's business associates either. Exactly my conclusion as well, the lawyer responded. But this is just like the unknown company mentioned in the will. All we know that is we don't know anything. Rennie and McClintock stared at each other across the desk, each letting his mental wheels grind, both coming up empty. McClintock spoke first. Pursuant to your father's instructions, I sent a copy to his obituary to each person. I enclosed a short cover letter and notifying them that I was following your father's last wishes. Did any of them respond? Rennie asked. No, not yet, said McClintock, shaking his head. I'll let you know if they do. Should I ask if there's anything else? Fortunately not, I guess. My secretary has duplicates of everything for you. Still numb, Rennie nodded. Of course. I will delay the sale of your parents' house as long as you need me to. It's hard to believe that the house will be sold, that everything will be sold and given away, Rennie said dully. McClintock came around the desk and put his hand on Rennie's shoulder. Call me if you need anything. I'll contact you as soon as I know anything else. Thanks, Rennie got up to leave. When he reached the door, he stopped. I forgot to ask, what is the value of the estate? McClintock paused. Depending on the value of his securities at the time of the probate, approximately $8 million. Going down the steps in front of McClintock and Carney, Rennie walked a block to his car, which was parked next to a pimento tree. His shirt was damp by the time he opened the door, throwing the folder of information about the estate on the passenger seat. He turned the air conditioner on full blast and drove toward the Battery. Turning down King Street, he slowed in front of St. Albans Episcopal Hospital and found a shady parking space under an oak tree beside the entrance of the church cemetery. The church was one of the oldest in Charleston. It was molted gray stone walls and muted stained glass windows often graced the pages of guidebooks and pictorial tours of the city for families like the Jacobsons who had lived in Charleston for over 200 years. St. Albans was a family gathering place on Christmas Eve, Easter morning, and the site for marrying and burying. The rest of the time, it was a primary and brief stop for busloads of hot tourists seeking a cool place on a steamy summer day. There hadn't been any new plots available in the original cemetery since World War I. To handle the ongoing tide of death, the church purchased land outside the downtown Charleston area and sold burial plots in what Remy called the cemetery annex. With the burial of Rennie's father, the Jacobson plot at the cemetery was at maximum occupancy, and Rennie guessed he would have to reserve a space for himself at the annex. The partners had no debt or financial needs. What Vestry would have do with a $2 million gift from his father's estate was beyond Rennie's comprehension. Buy more cemetery space, hire an additional worker to keep his hedge trimmed, and a few tufts of grass cut? Rennie shook his head in shock and disbelief as he gingerly made his way around the ancient markers of tombstones, some so faded it was hard to decipher the names and ages of those who rested under the sandy soil. Maybe he could get a free burial plot. Would be the least the partners could do. Surrounded by an ornate wrought iron railing, the Jacobson plot was easily identified by a 10-foot tall monument with the family name chiseled into all four sides at its base. His father and mother were side by side, his father's grave still mound of light brown dirt. A few dead flowers from the funeral were strewn on the ground. Rennie stared at his father's name on the headstone and asked the question that had reverberated in his mind since he read the handwritten will at McClintock's office. "Why?" he whispered. "Why? Why?" he said a little louder. "Why?" He wanted to scream at the top of his lungs. Nothing. A breeze stirred the leaves in the old trees, but did not cool Rennie's rising anger or assuage his inner pain. $8 million. He had known it would have been a lot of money, but not the actual amount. But the actual amount surprised him. His father had done better financially than he had realized, but for his only child, nothing. It was one thing for HL to deny Rennie the things he needed while alive. It was almost more painful to experience rejection from beyond the grave. Rage and resentment boiled inside his soul. Why? Why did you do this to me? Nothing. Picked up a dead flower stem, he threw it at the headstone. There are no answers here. Next to his father's mound of dirt, the level grave of Catherine Chandler Jacobson was covered with green grass. Turning toward her gravestone, Rennie continued questioning. Wherever she was, did she know what her husband had done to their only child? Why? He asked her resting place. Nothing. Shouldn't she share some of the blame? Why didn't you outlive him? Nothing. She died first, and the scant protection she offered Rennie died with her. She would have done differently, or at least tried to, but she was gone. He resented her abandonment, but his mother couldn't answer his questions, and she didn't deserve the blame. She had endured much herself, although skewed by her child's naturally positive perceptions of his parents and their flaws. Rennie knew his mother's relationship with his father was trying, but in the midst of a difficult marriage, Catherine gave her only surviving child memories worth preserving. She sat with him and listened while he told her about his day at the school. She was there when he needed wise counseling as a teenager. She kept the lines of communication open until the ravages of disease robbed her of her voice. Even then, her eyes continued to speak of a mother's love. Until the light went out too. Nothing responded to Rennie's gaze but marble and memories. Because of her and her alone, he would come back to this place, retracing his steps to his car. Rennie's anger gave to his detection. How many steps were there down there in the depths of hell in Dante's Inferno? How much more would he have to endure? Shortly after Rennie drove away, another car parked in the space Rennie vacated. An older man with a younger man's vigor and energy opened the door, walking briskly to the spot where Rennie had stood behind his father's grave. Looking at the tombstone, he smiled. To him, H.L. Jacobson's grave was not a place of rejection, anger, and frustration. It was a place of triumph. Sure of the infruitable evidence of his victory, he lingered for a moment, savoring his conquest, and left. It was not yet 5 o'clock, so Rennie decided he might as well stop at the bank and examine the gold coin collection before driving out to the Isle of the Palms. In earlier times, Planters and Merchants Bank, an ancient square, dark stone, 3-story building, contained a waterfront counting house. It was the financial center where traders, planters, and factors, the men who lent money secured by future rice, indigo, and cotton harvest, transacted their business affairs and counted their money. Most people viewed banks with a mixture of fear, awe, and distrust. But to Rennie, the old bank was a familiar territory, and the Planters and Merchants Bank, known as P&M, was likely an honored old grandfather, black and hoary on the outside, but noble and scented on the inside. Slipping through the safe deposit box key into his pocket, Rennie entered P&M through the solid wooden front doors and passed through the marble floor lobby to the desk of the custodian of the vault, a stoop-shouldered old gentleman resting with his head on his hands. I am J.F. Jacobson. I need access to box my number 413. Looking up sleepily, the clerk opened the drawer in the desk and pulled out a signature comparison card and a record of an access card. May I see some identification? And please sign here, sir. Rennie had handed him his driver's license. The clerk pushed the record of the access card across his desk, grunting. Just got back from there. Rennie picked up the card. Who is this? Rennie asked, trying to decipher the signature. It looks like Gusto something. He returning to his drawer, the clerk pulled out 3 signature cards on his reading glasses. There are 2 persons besides yourself with access to this box, he replied, somewhat more awake. Henry Lawrence Jacobson and Augustus Eleckwitz. Henry Lawrence Jacobson was my father. Who is Augustus Eleckwitz? Rennie asked sharply. Sir, how should I know? It's your box. Since June Since June 4th, 1981, the clerk replied, handing Remy the original signature charge for Mr. Elowitz. He added, "See, the signatures match exactly." Rennie examined the signature card. This was like deja vu from Mr. Clintock's office. More questions without answers. "Do you still want to open the box?" the clerk asked as he compared Rennie's signature to the signature card on his file. "I guess," Rennie replied, as the clerk led him through the whistling labyrinth of security area. Rennie asked, "Did Mr. Einstein take something from the box?" "Mr. Elowitz, sir? I'm sorry, I didn't notice." Rennie had little doubt there was nothing in the box. Mr. Elowitz, or whatever his name was, would have taken care of that. Safe deposit box 413 was a large drawer insert into a metal casing of the vault. The clerk pulled out a master key, turning to his side of the lock and waiting as Rennie inserted the key's mate next to it. With a click, the lock released, and the clerk pulled the drawer open an inch. "Let me know when you're finished," he mumbled as he shuffled out of the vault. Rennie slid the drawer out of the way. It was empty, except for 2 white envelopes lying face up in the bottom. Handwritten on both envelopes was his full name, Josiah Fletcher Jacobson. One of his father's handwriting, the other in unfamiliar scrawl. No return address. "Hi, Evan. Good to see you, hear from you again. It's been so long since I've heard from you." The envelope from his father had contained a heavy coin. Glancing over his shoulder, Rennie gently pried open the seal. Inside was an 1864 half-eagle $5 gold coin in excellent condition. Although possibly worth several $1,000s, one coin could hardly qualified as a collection. Rennie let the heavy coin rest in his hand for a moment before slipping into his pocket and opening the other envelope inside. He found a plain white casket labeled "The Covenant List," "The Mystery Company." Nothing else was in the envelope. No letter, no note. Rennie closed the safe deposit box and navigated out of the vault past the custodian's desk. "Thank you for your help," he said as he passed the sleepy-eyed clerk. Seated in his car, Rennie took a deep breath. Glancing in the rear of his mirror, he wondered if he was being followed. He didn't know Augustus Elowitz, but this man probably knew him. Was he watching him now? Was he planning to attack at a vulnerable, unexpected moment? Picking up the car phone, he called McClintock's office. "Mr. McClintock, please." "I'm so sorry. Mr. McClintock has left for the day," the receptionist chirped. "This is Rennie Jacobson. I was just in to see him. Do you know if he went home?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Jacobson. He was leaving to pick up his wife and fly to Key Biscayne. He will not be back in the office until Wednesday. Should I leave him a message?" "No, that's okay. I'll call him back another time." I'm the only one. Oh, no, I'm not. I am now. Now I am. Yeah, I'm almost. I'm thinking when we get to 3,000, I might bring people on here. That would be like a little plan. We're getting there. We probably would have been at if I haven't been, been stupid and lazy at, posting things. But I need to get back on it. That's why I'm doing these lives with you guys. Sea surge and winds exceeding 100 miles per hour had demolished most of the homes, buildings, and aisles of palms. Mr. Jacobson's home, a federal-style old brick dwelling, was sufficient sheltered by the highest dunes of the island to survive without serious damage. Rennie had brought a key to the house with him to Charlotte. Since vacant since H.L.'s death, the house had a musty smell as he entered the kitchen. The stereo was in the den, a dark paneled room with a view of marshes. Pulling green leather ottoman from the stereo, Rennie inserted the casket and pressed the play button. Then, like an old Mission Impossible series on the TV, he waited for the message moment. "Good morning, Mr. Phelps. Your mission should choose to accept." He flinched slightly when his father's familiar voice filled the room. "Rennie, I am recording this message shortly after your mother's death. On the same day, I have prepared my handwritten will. I assume you're listening to this casket after meeting with Jefferson McClintock or one of his associates on obtaining this tape and a gold coin from the safe deposit box at P&M. If you are with anyone else, please honor my wishes and ask them to leave now. What I have to tell you is for your ears only." After a brief pause, the voice continued. "I asked a friend, Augustus Elowitz, to deliver the tape to a safe deposit box as soon as he received the news of my death. I mentioned the gold coin collection in my will to ensure that you went to the box. The half-eagle coin has been passed down from father to son in our family for 140 years, and I would ask you not to sell it. Keep it to give it to your firstborn son. As gold, it is a symbol of true source of enduring wealth for our family. I am aware that the provisions of my will have come shock to you. However, if you listen to this tape, you will understand what I have done. In my will, I have made a specific request of you of my interest in the Covenant list of South Carolina. Neither Jeff McClintock nor anyone in the office knows what is passed to you. I can tell you that it is far more valuable than any combined assets of my known estate. The charitable requests in my will are a fraction of the value of your interest in the list, as we call it." Rennie sat stunned. As you know, our family line goes back to the early days of European settlement of the Low Country. Toward the end of the Civil War, most planters and landowners faced financial ruin. Our family, together with 10 other families from a local aristocracy, entered into an agreement of cooperation for the common good. The list is merely a way of identifying this group of families, pooling a significant percentage of its remaining sources. This group smuggled in gold and hard assets out of the Confederacy to safe havens in Europe. The 11 male heads of the family also entered into agreement obligating their firstborn sons to offer a mutual commitment to contribute. Oh, happy birthday, Evan! I'm probably going to miss it because I have an interview tomorrow, but happy early birthday. How old are you turning? To receive the benefits of the funds sent overseas. Since that time, your forebears have remained true to their word. You are the 5th generation of Jacobsons, privileged to take his place on the list. The 9 men who received the obituary notice that the current members of the list. One of the original families no longer has any direct bloodline descendants. When a family member dies, you turn 10? Congratulations. I think my niece is turning 10 too. When a member dies, it is necessary to hold a meeting of the survivors to install the next man in line for the family involved. I have a box at the main office in Charleston. The key is in my desk at the hole on the Isle of Palms. You will receive a notice of the building by letter at the post office box. And the old storage building behind the house on it. St. Michael's Alley is a trunk containing paperwork you must take to the meeting. Stillwell has let me use the building for many years. The key for the storage shed is also in the desk of St. Isle of Palms. In the meantime, do not discuss this with anyone. One of the linchpins of our mutual success has been secrecy, an obvious necessity in the day of high taxes. All right, have fun. Rennie smiled ruefully. So his father probably had a felony tax invader. There are other more intangible, but nevertheless important benefits of social associated with a member to the list. You will learn more all the benefits at the appropriate time. Bobby Dim. Seize the day, Rennie echoed softly. He listened for a full minute to the scratching tape as it continued to turn in the machine. That was it. Children occasionally fantasize that their parents had a different secret life. A father who worked for the CIA, a mother who was an heiress to a European fortune. Such a thought was no longer a fantasy for Rennie. Hitting the rewind switch, he backed the tape to the beginning and listened again. Nothing changed. Rennie pulled open the middle drawer of his father's desk. The 2 keys mentioned on the tapes sat in a tray. One was standard government issue post box office key with a string tied to a round small disc, labeled Box 399. Love you too, Abigail. Where was I? Slipping the keys into his pocket, Rennie went into the kitchen. There wasn't anything to eat in the pantry. His father's housekeeper had no doubt cleaned it out already. Dusk was creeping over the marsh when he looked out the window in the basket nook adjacent to the kitchen. Still somewhat dazed by the information he received, Rennie sat at a small round table for several minutes. His stomach rumbled. Dreams of future wealth could not take the place of a good supper. Hopping back to his car, he retraced his route to the edge of the city and stopped at a shrimp boil shack. Within 45 minutes, he had peeled and eaten 3/4 of a pound of pink delicacy and drained 2 large frosted mugs of draft beer. Fortified, he did not want to return immediately to an empty aisle of Palm's house. Jiggling in the post office box and storage building keys in his pocket, he decided to drive downtown. The post office was open till 11 p.m., and he had plenty of time to check the mail before stopping by the storage building at St. Michael's alleyway. The heat of the afternoon had diminished, and Rennie put the top down on the car before navigating the familiar streets. Box 399 was one of the smallest boxes available. Not the place for someone expecting a lot of correspondence. Opening it, he took out a sales file from Walmart, a sheet of pizza costumes addressed to Patron, and a letter addressed to Josiah Fletcher Jacobson, C.O.H.L. Jacobson. Rennie realized he was following a well-marked path through the woods. The return address was simple: P.O. Box 1493, Georgetown, South Carolina. He remembered 2 names on the list with the Georgetown addresses. It had to be from one of them. Taking the letter to a table against the wall of the post office, Rennie carefully broke the seal and pulled out 2 sheets of ivory-colored paper. The top one was dated the previous week. Dear Mr. Jacobson, please accept my condolences of your father's death. As custodian of the list, he provided admirable leadership over the years. He will be missed by all who knew him. Due to the death of your father and Mr. Taylor Johnson, there will be a meeting of the members on the list on August 25th at Rice Planters in Georgetown, South Carolina. You, as your father's heir and designee, and Mr. Joe Taylor Johnston, the Johnston heir and designee, will be installed at that time. In addition, I am sure your father took care to furnish you with the location of the documents he had held in trust as custodian. It is imperative that you bring these items with you to Georgetown so that we can conduct our business. Please do not discuss these matters with anyone. Respectfully, Hi Loretta. Respectfully, Desmond R. LaRoche. The letter was copied to the names furnished by H.L. to Jefferson McClintock. The second sheet was was a letter similar to Rennie's sent to the other man whose father had recently died, Mr. Joe Taylor Johnson. Leaning against the table, Rennie folded the 2 letters and put them back in the envelope. Whatever it was, whatever it meant for the future, the list was real. His father did not prepare the taped message as a cruel joke with April Fools as the punchline. HL had held some sort of official position within the group. There were real people from several states involved. They held meetings, they communicated through specifically designated post office boxes. In a few days, he would see them face to face and find out what. The amount of money involved would be a start. He was going to have to trade in fantasies about wealth from his father's estate for new ones, funded by a different cache of money, which his father considered far greater than my known estate. Walking outside, Rennie was tired. Like a child who stayed too long at an amusement park, he was overloaded from the intense stimulus of day. However, he still had one stop to make before returning to Isle of Palms. Following the quiet downtown streets to St. Michael's Alley, he picked up a dark, deserted Stillwell gallery. Rennie's family had built the cream-colored house in 1836. Partially held together by a huge earthquake bolt, the secured and had survived everything from the Civil War to the Hurricane Hugo. It was typically antebellum home. The original house, a separate cookhouse, and an adjacent livery stable were now incorporated into a main dwelling. The building was only distinctive architectural figure was the 3rd-story bay window extended 5 or 6 feet out over the street. Legend had it that the early Mrs. Jacobson, an invalid with keen eyesight, ordered the window to be built to provide an unobstructed view up and down the street so she could keep a close eye on her husband as he drove his buggy to a shipping office near the docks. No colorful paths put Jacobson's house on the cover of guidebooks or caused busloads of gaping tourists to stop and see where the shots fired, the blood spilled, or the famous slept. Tourists came to the shop for antiques, not to gather pieces of historical information. Rennie's family had not lived in the house since World War II. The Charleston waterfront area had deteriorated for many years, so HL's parents sold the house and moved to the Isle of Palms in the late 1940s. When the older areas of Charleston made a comeback, the Jacobson house was renovated by a group of businessmen who brought it as an investment. Glenn Stillwell, the owner of Stillwell Gallery, had paid $5,000 a month for the privilege of displaying a good selection of low country antiques. Rennie wished his family had never sold the house. Parking the bay window, he took the flashlight out of his glove compartment and wondered, if Mr. Stillwell had a security system designed to sense physical presence near the building after hours, Rennie doubted it, but he nevertheless moved gingerly around to the side of the shop to a small wooden gate leading to the backyard. Lifting an ancient iron latch, he pushed the gate open and stepped onto a slate stone patio that stretched half the length of the house before yielding into a small patch of grass ringed with narrow flower beds. A higher brick wall enclosed the yard. The storage building, snugly set against the wall and covered with ivy, sat in the far corner of the grassy area. Rennie's flashlight generated a feeble beam that barely cut through the darkness. He couldn't remember if the storage building was wired with electricity or not. Moving slowly across the gate, he fished the skeleton key from his pocket and as he quietly approached the door. Although not a naturally timid person, he had to banish sinister images of old Sherlock Holmes movies that crept into his mind as he approached the shed. Turning the knob, the door creaked open. Relieved, Rennie cautiously stepped forward and then recoiled in horror as something suspended from the ceiling and struck him in the face. It was a metal chain from an overhead light. Telling his heart to stop pounding, Rennie pulled the chain, and a bare bulb illuminated the little room. To the one side of the rotary push mower, and on the other side sat several cans of paint, a few garden tools against the black wall, and a small wooden truck, obviously old and probably an antique. Rennie picked up a trunk by ordinary carved handles on its side and positioned it under the light. A modern combination lock secured a metal latch plate on the chest front. Rennie pulled on it, but it didn't yield to his tug. Hoisting the trunk onto his left shoulder, he retraced his steps across the yard, alternately shining the flashlight ahead, behind, into both sides. His booty was secured. He drove northeast toward the Isle of Palms. Alright, that was chapters 1 and 2 of the list. I will do a part 2 when I have time. It'll probably be tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I'll do it again. Thank you all for watching and listening to me read. Thank you for all who commented, and thank you all for liking the video, and we'll read and talk tomorrow.